Thank you, Richard. And I apologize to all people in the audience. My Spanish, well, I don't speak any Spanish. It's I'm sorry. I have learned some this week, though. I can now order coffee and it's a few other things. My presentation is called Reflections on 20 Years in Development. And when I was first asked to come and talk about it, I really didn't realize it was a full 20 years. So time sure flies when you're having fun. It's true. The picture of the lighthouse is a picture I took last summer. I live near the most easterly point in all of North America. I have that claim to fame. Sometimes we like to say we'll go there and get our picture taken with our back turned to Canada. So we're turning our back to the rest of North America. So it's sort of a tourist thing, but we just make fun. But it is, we are quite remote on the East Coast. The mission, and the mission I've probably been involved in to some level in the last 20 years, speaks to transform the rural economy through leadership and information technology applications for economic development. That is very broad. And when I first wrote the mission and read the mission, I wasn't sure of how it applied completely. But as I look back through developing this presentation, looking back over the last 20 years, I think pretty much everything I've done in some way or another has been connected to this mission. Just a little map of where I live, where I come from, where I call home. Newfoundland and Labrador is a province. The Newfoundland component is an island. It is on the east coast of Canada, and we are at the most easterly point. I'm a long ways from home, but the interesting part is the time difference is only 30 minutes, a half hour. And the reason is we have our own time zone in Newfoundland, which is sort of unique. But it's the time zone is, so I didn't have any jet lag for this trip, even though I traveled a long ways, which is excellent. Just talk a little bit more about the province. It is the most easterly point. It's a very large landmass, about 400 square kilometers, but the population is only 500,000 people. That's not a lot of people when you think about probably your countries. 40% of the entire population lives in one city on the east coast called St. John's. I don't live there. I live about 2 hours west of that in a little town called Clarenville, about 6,000 people. We have 700 rural communities. So if you look at the total population of 500,000, with 40% in the city, take 700 communities, you now realize we have a lot of little communities with very low populations that are very rural, and this is the challenge. Richard sort of stole my slide here. I think the first telecentre that we were aware of in Sweden back in the mid-80s, there was 3 individuals that went from Newfoundland with government, and Richard was one of them, to visit the telecentres. We had a lot of economic challenges on our island with fisheries, farming, very high unemployment rates, and we were looking for solutions, and we heard about the telecentres, what they were doing in rural Sweden, and a little research team went off. And from that visit and partnerships formed, a model was created and a pilot was funded, and telecentres were created in Newfoundland and Labrador. The first telecentre opened in Clarenville, where I live now, in 1989. I started working there in 1991. And following that, telecentres were opened officially in 6 other places in the island. This is the map of Newfoundland and shows the telecentres with the stars. But it's also important to note that in addition to these 6 telecentres, which were staff, that had staff employed, we had a lot of rural outreach centres, some 50 odd development associations, a multitude of other sites. So we spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time, and I know Richard spent a lot of time visiting the other telecentres and the rural communities, getting them connected. But I want to remind you of the time frame. It is late 80s, early 90s. There was no Wi-Fi, there was no broadband, there was no Google, those type of things. So we actually set up our own email network where we actually dialed in on the phone lines and got email, and then we built databases. So it was a little bit I know the internet was invented, but we hadn't hit our neck of the woods yet. This is a couple of pictures, a much younger Richard Fuchs and a much younger Theresa Pittman and some guests that we had. We were very proud of our telecentre, and this is one picture we have. You can see the computer, our fax machine. We had a big photocopier. So, back in 1989, this is pretty sophisticated stuff. We also had a strong champion. One of the things I've learned that makes telecentres successful, and I've met a lot of champions this week, and I'm very grateful for that. But back in the late 80s, when we opened our telecentre, we had a champion. You can't really see him very well in the picture, but his name was Steve Quinton. He was the principal of the community college. He's now retired. And he saw the vision. He really worked hard to make the telecentre happen. And this is a picture of him next to a sign that we posted on the highway. This says, "Welcome to the town." And we did our own sign and said, we are now connected to the information highway. And it's a picture of him there. So we did a lot of promotion. We were very proud of it. This is a picture taken in a little town called Trinity, not too far from where I live. And the goal of the telecentre was not just to stay within the four walls of the institution, of the college or the development associate. It was to get out and meet the people, go to the small communities, and ensure that those people were also connected and develop skills, knowledge, all kinds of government programming, education, to get access to technology and help it change their lives. Then a couple of quick pictures. We also did a lot of demoing, because in those days, a lot of people really didn't understand what we were trying to accomplish. We probably didn't know at the time, half the time. But these are some pictures, again, of Richard demoing. We used to say demo or die. You had to demo, because people you had to show them, and sometimes you had to show government officials, you had to show, people in the small towns. And this is some pictures of an expo that we would go and set up. So we did a lot of packing up and going on the road and showing them, taking their computers with us. And this is a picture that we have of, in later years, the whole team from all the telecentres, a telecentre regional managers meeting got together. And one thing Richard said at his first comments on Tuesday, it's been a long week, and he said, there was a lot of value when the telecentre managers got together. We learn from each other. And again, this is the same type of telecentre meeting, but on a global scale. So I'm sure you have, as I have this week, taken the opportunity to connect and meet with your fellow telecentre supporters, because you learn a lot from each other. In 1988, 2002, the telecentre changed. The government funding model changed. There was a change in governments. Also the internet, there was broadband initiatives coming in, there was increased internet availability, the federal government came in with their own community access program, CAP program, they put computers in libraries, so there was a whole change going on. This had an impact on our telecentres, however, but the Clareville Telecentre saw this wave of change, and because it was so connected with the community college and really saw the vision of education being a real benefit of, if you're going to connect all these communities, what is one of the reasons that we can do it for? What is the content? And they started a pilot, a distance learning program. I came back to work there at that centre in 2002 as an instructional design specialist. I did that for a couple of years, and was actually in the same telecentre space. From 2005, 2010, I personally went on and went and furthered my education. I had various positions within the college in institutional research and worked with the government Department of Education. Last year, the person who was the manager of the centre, the chair, resigned, and I competed for the job and was delighted. So I'm not quite. On April 12th last year, I became the chair of distance learning. So I'm back in my old office, like I said this morning, in a job, and it's still in the same telecentre, so it's great. The main office of the College Distributed Learning Centre is in Clareville. It's important to note that this is a fairly big college. It's a public college. It has 17 other campuses. Its headquarters is on the west coast, about 800 kilometers away. It's got a big campus in the city in St. John's. In a small campus, they decided that this is where the distance learning program entire office will be. So this is very significant, because if it wasn't for the telecentre, the distance learning centre would not be located in this small town. It now employs 15 staff. I got 15 faculty and full-time faculty, and another 15 part-time instructors that are located in different places. In a small town, this is not an insignificant number in terms of employment. We currently offer 10 full-time programs. Those are programs that are, have a diploma granting status by our academic council, and we have about 250, 300 courses that are online. This year, between the fall, winter, and intersession, we'll have 4,500 course registrations. So we're quite proud of the growth of the project in the last 10 years. This is my team. We just recently had a meeting. This was the first time that they've all been together in probably since the beginning, because it's grown and people live in different places. So this was just taken last month. So this is a lot of my faculty and staff, and very proud to work with them all. I'll sum up just a couple of reflections. Looking back on the last 10 years, change is the goal, and I don't think anybody here probably needs much more of an explanation of that. It's very important. That's what we're all about. In order for that to happen, people, you, leaders, and committed team members make the change happen. Change doesn't happen by itself. The third point is technology assists with the change. It isn't the change, it only assists with the change. I think it's important for us to always remember to adapt the technology to match the change that you desire. It's very easy, I think, to let the technology drive the program, drive the project. Technology is changing. But for me, I think it's always important to try to remember for myself, and I encourage you to do the same, is does the technology meet your needs and your goals, and make the technology change to suit what you want to do. And the last one is learn from each other's perspectives. Connect, which is what we're doing this week, and what we'll continue to do hopefully in the upcoming months through online venues. Communicate and to build. It's important to continue to build. It's my last slide. These are some things I thought about in my experiences, what telecentres need to be. And what they've been for me, and if I was to continue to start another one tomorrow, what I'd certainly make sure are 3 points. The first one is they got to be multi-purpose. I think it's a given. Sometimes telecentres have single focus, and sometimes that works. But in my own experience, the success of our telecentre was because we were multi-purpose. Be diverse, be adaptable to change. People change, communities change, technologies changes, the leaders change. You need to be adaptable. And also be eager to innovate. I think most people that get involved with telecentres have a curiosity about them, a curiosity that says, what can this technology do? And they want to help it bring about change. So you need to embrace it and be eager to innovate. Secondly, and again, this is based on my own experience, it's important for us that we had linkages to education. That was a big part of our end goal. And I don't mean necessarily a formal linkage or a formal college or to, it can very well be informal and formal. And I think we've seen an example of some projects this week, especially Telecentre Academy, that emphasize this. So I think for me that will be one thing I would recommend. In combination with that, I think it's also important to include learning in all aspects of the operation. Because everything you do as a telecentre manager, and everything I did and everything I do in my job now, you're learning or you're teaching. And the best way I've found to learn is to teach somebody else or try to teach somebody else. So when we operated our telecentre, when we were growing into rural communities, sometimes we could have easily passed the person the information and said, here, there's the statistics you're looking for, or here's the information. But we didn't do it. We had a rule against doing that. It's important that you help the person who needs it find that information, so the next time they want something different, they've learned that skill. That's really important. Lastly, I think telecentres are about community. I think we're all probably here very community-minded. We want our communities to succeed and to thrive on various levels, be it social or economic, and economic. To do that, I think you have to form partnerships and be open to your partnerships. Partnerships in different communities could be with different people, private or public, and your partnerships may change over time. And the other thing is your telecentre really needs to reflect the needs of your community, because your community is probably similar to my community, but it's probably also very different. And my community 10 years ago is probably different than it is today. So you always need to reflect, have your telecentre evolve to reflect the needs of your community. And again, these are just things from my experience. They may be familiar to you, maybe not. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing your questions, and I'll pass it back to you, Richard.